taking the time to attend this session, and I trust that you will find this session informative. We will have two speakers tonight. We will introduce you to Halocare, and they will be explaining what our diabetes program has to offer and what Halocare's function is within the scheme. We will also have a dietitian speaking about the importance of eating healthy with regards to diabetes. Our first speaker will be Tembi Mutana. Tembi is from the Diabetes Management Program, Halocare. She has 14 years of experience in the healthcare industry and has done extensive work with Bestmed members and partners. Our second speaker is Hildegard Strijdom. She is a registered dietitian and she studied dietetics at the University of Pretoria and obtained her degree in 2001. In January 2002, she started working at the National Health Services in the United Kingdom. She has worked in hospitals all over England and it was there that she first developed an interest in the dietary treatment of diabetes. Upon her return to South Africa, she started a private practice with a special focus on the treatment of diabetes, insulin resistance, and weight management. She continued her tertiary studies and received her master's degree in 2009 with research focusing on the knowledge of South African dietitians regarding the implementation of a diet with a low glycemic index in the prevention and management of diabetes. Apart from being in private practice, she has been involved in writing diet-related information sheets for pharmaceutical companies, was consultant for various diet-related magazine articles, consulted as a food labeling specialist, and did training sessions on diabetic dietary intervention for medical doctors, dietitians, and pharmacists. So over to you, Tembi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. What an awesome introduction. A very warm welcome to the Bestmed members. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your presence. Today is World Diabetes Day. Just to share a bit of background, on the 20th of December 2006, the General Assembly of United Nations passed a landmark resolution recognizing diabetes as a chronic condition. The resolution labels World Diabetes Day as a United Nations Day to be recognized every year starting in 2007. And the reason why it's on the 14th of November is to commemorate the birthday of Sir Frederick Banting, who co-discovered insulin back in 1922. And today, World Diabetes Day is recognized in over 170 countries. Let's have a look at the facts. Did you know that 1 in 9 people in South Africa are living with diabetes? That's 4.2 million people in South Africa that either have type 1 or type 2 diabetes. According to the World Health Organization, there's a projected increase of 129% of people that will be living with diabetes worldwide by the year 2045. Having said that, the theme for this year is access to diabetes care and education. And hopefully today, in partnership with Bestmed, we can provide that. Let's have a look at the Halocare partnership with Bestmed. Back in 2019, Bestmed partnered with Halocare to manage and oversee the diabetes care program. And Halocare is a managed care organization that is fully accredited by the Council of Medical Schemes. And we currently are looking after close to 11,000 of Bestmed diabetes members. We coordinate with different role players within the healthcare and diabetes management space, such as your treating doctor, pathology labs, to achieve the best health outcomes for members. We act as the main liaison between the member and the preferred healthcare provider and Bestmed. And in addition to this, we review and apply the latest clinical guidelines in managing diabetes to ensure that we are up to date with information as well as recommendations for the most effective treatment plans. All of the above happens with the absolute patient confidentiality, and we abide by the POPIA Act in order to protect the members' information. a look at how we actually do this. We are there with members every step of the way. We're actively managing the members. Once you are registered by Bestmed for diabetes, we create a profile for you so that we have all your information in one place. Then one of our nurses contacts you to gather more information regarding your health and condition. We send you reminders to do a 6-month blood test and renew your script for diabetes medications. Our nurses are available should you have concerns or questions regarding your treatment. You are able to contact them. In case of emergencies, one of our diabetic educators is available to assist you or your family. It is important for us to take all of your conditions into account. For example, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, when advising and assisting you for a healthy lifestyle. We have a holistic approach that by gathering your health information, we can make informed decisions and give you the appropriate guidance and education. This program is designed to assist the diabetic member and their dependents to live a constructive and rewarding life. We mention dependents because they are your support structure on this journey of getting a better and healthier you. Our main aim, thirdly, is to preserve your well-being, promote a healthy lifestyle, and to assist and guide you to prevent diabetes-related complications. Our team is there to support and assist you in your health journey together with your doctor. By having insights in your condition and understanding the importance of healthy living, together we can achieve a better quality of life. The main benefits of the Diabetes Care Program. First and foremost, the program enrollment is absolutely free. You're part of the program once you're registered as a diabetic by Bestmed, and this is at no additional cost. You have access to diabetic specific support. Our diabetes nurse educators, as well as the clinical team, is available to assist with your questions and concerns regarding your treatment. We provide emergency and after-hour support to assist you and your family. It is completely convenient. You can visit your nearest Dis-Chem pharmacy clinic for a health assessment that includes your blood pressure reading, your height, weight, your 6-monthly blood test, and this is very, very important, your HbA1c test that your doctor will need when reissuing your prescription and renewing your health and diabetes treatment plans. We provide continuous educations, and our nurses will provide you with general lifestyle guidance, latest treatment trends, and empowering you about living healthy with diabetes. So things to remember for the next 12 months. It is important to take your medicine daily as per your doctor's prescription. By following a healthy diet and staying active, you will improve your health and prevent unnecessary complication and health risks. Even if it's a walk around the block a few times a week, it's something and it counts. Why is it important to keep a diabetes diary for at least 1 week, every 3 months? Keeping a diabetic diary will assist you in learning how certain foods and meals affect your blood sugar levels. You are then able to make an informed decision and necessary lifestyle and diet changes. You need to go for your blood test every 6 months. This will assist your doctor to review your health profile and ensure that your treatment is effective and sufficient to keep your diabetes controlled. By doing this, you minimize the risk of damage to your kidneys, eyes, feet, and other organs. With your yearly doctor visit, your doctor will also review your kidney function. Over time, diabetes can cause damage to blood vessels in your kidneys. This may lead to high blood pressure and other heart conditions, which is definitely something that we do not want. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions or comments about today's session, we've got our contact details on the screen and kindly use them to get assistance. We are here with you, for you, We know that if we educate our members, we protect tomorrow. I'll hand over to our dietitian, Hildegard Stradom, to share more information regarding the importance of food and a healthy diet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tembi. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to tell you more about how diet can be used in the treatment and management of diabetes. I'm just going to open my slides quickly. There we go. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. Now, just like a car, our bodies need fuel to function. So just like your car won't be able to run without fuel, it's very much the same with our bodies. We use fuel for absolutely everything we do. So whether you are walking, talking, moving, breathing, eating, sleeping, or working, our bodies also uses fuel. And the fuel that our bodies use is called glucose. Now, we get glucose only when we eat carbohydrates. So all carbohydrates will be broken down to glucose. Now, carbohydrates are found in only 5 food groups. The first and the very best source of carbohydrates will be starch. So this will include bread, rice, potatoes, cereals, porridges, pasta, etc. Secondly, it's found in sugar-containing foods and drinks, inside fruits and vegetables, inside milk and yogurt, and legumes. Legumes would be like baked beans, butter beans, chickpeas, lentils, etc. Now, milk and yogurt and legumes are actually counted as proteins, but because they do also contain a certain amount of carbohydrates, they will also be able to give you glucose. Now, the reason why I start off with carbohydrates is because carbohydrates is the micronutrient with the biggest effect on blood glucose levels. All right, so let's have a look and see how the body will use these carbohydrates and how it can affect your blood sugar levels. So let's start with carbohydrate digestion. So whenever you eat any sort of a carbohydrate, the carbohydrate will enter the stomach and you will start with digestion. Once the carbohydrates are digested, glucose will be released into the bloodstream. The moment that glucose enters the bloodstream, your pancreas will produce and release a hormone called insulin. If you are type 1 diabetic, your pancreas will not be releasing insulin, but you will be injecting it. So the picture will still look the same, the source is just different. So what happens now is the carbohydrates together with the glucose together with the insulin will come to your cell, your body cells, like muscle and organ cells. And here at the cell door, it will be like the insulin is the key that unlocks the cell so that the glucose can enter the muscle or the organ. So this is the way it will normally work in carbohydrate digestion. But now, like with everything in life, there's a catch. And the catch is not all carbohydrates that we get in our diets are broken down to glucose at the same rate. So sometimes we can eat carbohydrates that are broken down really quickly. So it means minutes after eating the carbohydrate, all the glucose will arrive in the blood at once. And that will cause the pancreas to release a whole lot of insulin. Because remember, the way it works is the more glucose that's released, the more insulin they will be released. So you can kind of see it as for every glucose, there will be a key. And then what happens here is you can see like lots of glucose, so the blood sugar level will shoot up, and we'll also have, very importantly, high concentrations of insulin after eating these kind of carbohydrates. Then on the other hand, we can get carbohydrates that are broken down very, very slowly. So the glucose will come into the blood slowly, and it will take hours to digest this glucose. And because only a little bit of glucose comes into the blood, you will only release a little bit of insulin. Now, this difference in the rate at which carbohydrates becomes glucose is called the glycemic index of a carbohydrate. So it basically means if a carbohydrate is broken down very quickly, it will have a high GI value, and if it's broken down very slowly, it will have a low GI value. So remember, carbohydrates that I always say to the patients, easy to remember, low, slow. So low GI carbohydrates will be released slowly, and high GI ones will be released fast into the blood. So let's see, how do we develop type 2 diabetes in specifically? Okay, so when you eat carbohydrates and you mainly eat high GI foods for most of the time, your picture and your blood will always look like this. So there will be lots of glucose, but more importantly, followed by lots of insulin. Now, if you always have lots of insulin in your bloodstream, or mostly lots of insulin, these insulin keys will be knocking on these cell doors all the time. And what happens then, after a while, your cell doors will become resistant to all this insulin. So basically how it works is, it's exactly like when children play that game, knock and run at your house. I don't know if you know that game, but it's a game where children come to your house and they knock on your door, and before you open, they run away. Now, if they play that game, you might go and open the door once or twice, but then after a while, you realize they're just playing with you. And when they knock again, you will ignore them and you don't open the door. And this is exactly what happens when we have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. But also remember that type 1 diabetics can also develop insulin resistance. So what happens here at cellular level then is, because of a very high concentration of insulin over a long period of time, your cell doors will become resistant to the insulin. So what happens is, you will eat the carbohydrate, it will be digested to glucose, it enters the bloodstream, insulin will be released, or you will inject the insulin. But once the glucose and the insulin key arrives at the cellular site, the insulin key does not work, and so the glucose cannot be absorbed into the cell. And the problem then is that the glucose will stay behind in the blood, and the glucose will then, and obviously you will then measure high blood sugar levels, but also at first, your pancreas will keep on producing insulin. So lots and lots of insulin will be produced. And that causes your body to become even more insulin resistant. And also remember, high insulin levels will cause us to store fat. So it makes weight loss much more difficult. And you can see this is a very, very negative cycle that will then continue. So as I said here, constant high levels of insulin will cause insulin resistance. So do remember, when we look at the dietary treatment of diabetes, we want to focus on introducing a diet where we can reduce the insulin levels, because insulin resistance is one of the most, the biggest problem that you face when you do have diabetes. Okay, now let's have a look quickly at the definition of the GI. So the GI is basically, if we look at it, the rating of foods according to the actual effect on blood glucose level. So whether a carbohydrate has a high, medium, or low effect on your blood sugar reading. Just looking at the breakdown of the word gly refers to glucose, emic, obviously blood, and index is a list. So it's basically a list to tell us how the glucose affects our blood sugar readings. Now let's quickly have a look. You will know that when we eat certain kind of carbohydrates, you will have different symptoms. So first of all, we're going to have a look at carbohydrates that enters the blood really quickly. So meaning high GI. So how the picture will look is like this. So your blood sugar level will be here before you start eating. Now, when we eat things with carbohydrates with a high GI value, meaning that they will rush into your blood within minutes, your blood sugar level within minutes after eating the food will shoot up. And you will then need lots of insulin to get rid of it. So remember at the previous picture, there was lots of little G's for glucose and lots of insulin. So this is basically what happens there. And what happens then is the blood sugar level will drop down really quickly. And it drops to a point lower than before you started eating. Now, when you hit this low point, you will have symptoms to tell you that your petrol tank is empty. It's just like when you're driving in your car and there's no petrol left, and the car has a little light that goes on, an indicator to show you that you need to fill up with petrol. It's kind of the same with us. We get symptoms to tell us it's time to fill up because the petrol tank is empty. So the first symptom we will get is extreme hunger. You know that feeling when you get home from work and you can just eat anything and everything, you like so hungry. Also, it will cause us to never feel full. So you can have a big meal, a big plate of food, and then afterwards you think, what can I eat now? So it's almost like there's always a hole, there's always space for more. We also then get cravings for specific foods. So it's not like I'm hungry and I'll have an apple or a carrot. So like, no, I would like something like chocolates or sweets or chips or biscuits or cakes. So something very specific that you crave for. It will then also cause slumps in energy. So you will get a dip in energy levels where you all of a sudden just feel really tired and sleepy. And this very commonly happens between main meals. So you can get this dip in energy 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 8 o'clock at night. But obviously it can happen anytime, or just kind of a general feeling of tiredness. We often also feel very irritated when the blood sugar levels drop. So you're just not happy. And then it can definitely affect your concentration levels. So basically having difficulty to concentrate, remember, and focus. And then in very bad cases, you will also get shaky, dizzy, lightheaded, nauseous. So the very low blood sugar symptoms that we get. Now, quite shocking is this whole story. From when you eat until it drops way down, will take between 5 minutes to 1 hour. So if you think about 5 minutes, you are still at your dinner table, you haven't even left the table yet after a meal, and already the blood sugar has dropped. And the problem is that it drops to a point lower than before you started eating. So meaning you will eat yourself hungry. So a little bit difficult to try and lose weight. And we all know that diabetes often does go with weight problems or being overweight. So a little bit difficult to try and lose weight if we are hungry within 5 minutes after a meal, and actually more hungry than before, and also sitting with lots of cravings. Now, the worst thing that happens with this specific picture is the point that the blood sugar will shoot up and go very high. So it means your blood sugar will often go over 10, and we know that causes damage to the body. So all the, the diabetic side effects that the doctors always tells us about, like, like neuropathy in your hands and feet. It can cause blindness, kidney failure, like problems with your arteries. So all the side effects can happen if the blood sugar shoots up like this. So this means permanent damage. But also this high insulin levels. The high insulin levels means with every meal, you will make the insulin resistance worse. And if you're not injecting insulin yet, it means you are putting yourself at risk of actually becoming more and more resistant and having to inject at some point. And if you are injecting, obviously you would need more and more insulin. So you can see how this is really bad. And do remember what I said before. If we have very high levels of insulin in the blood, we will also store more body fat. So meaning, again, it makes weight loss very difficult. And this insulin makes us store fat around the abdominal area specifically. So, and I'm sure many of you know about that. So let's have a look, what would better blood sugar control then look like through diet? So with better blood sugar control, we look for carbohydrates that will be released into the bloodstream slowly. So meaning these carbohydrates will release their glucose slowly but surely, and it will come into the blood very slowly over 3 hours. So it's a lot longer than that 5 minutes to an hour that we got when we ate the very fast releasing high GI carbohydrates. Now, because with this green curve that I'm showing you here with the low GI carbohydrates, we don't shoot up and we don't drop down. We will not have any of these symptoms. So what you will find when you eat these kind of carbohydrate is you will have a decrease in appetite. You will feel fuller for longer, and that sugar cravings will disappear. Now, many of my patients say to me, this is impossible. My sugar cravings will never disappear. I was born with a sweet tooth. And then I say, no, you were definitely not born with a sweet tooth. It was just like you had always eaten poorly since you were a child, and blood sugar control has always been poor. Now, the next thing that happens is like this lady here, you will have lots and lots of energy. So basically you will feel like not sleepy anymore. You won't get that kind of dips in energy middle of the day. So you will just basically feel a lot more energetic, like 10 years younger. We will feel much calmer. So the irritability will go away. So kind of happier, and also better mental performance. So better concentration, focus, and memory. And then none of that shakiness, dizziness, or lightheadedness. Now, also, if you have better blood sugar control, you will have a reduced risk to illness. So why this happens is, if we have poor blood sugar control, it's like it is an inflammatory response. That's why when we had the coronavirus, we were so afraid of diabetics having the virus, and that's because they have a reduced I can say immunity. There's more inflammation going on. But with good blood sugar control, you actually have a reduced risk of illness. Also, we have fat loss. Now, why do we have fat loss? If you look at my picture and you compare it to the previous one I showed you, in this case, we have a lot less insulin. So remember, the moment you start eating carbohydrates that are released slower into the blood, so the low GI carbohydrates, you will immediately need less insulin. And if you need less insulin, the first wonderful benefit is that we will not store fat like we did with high GI foods, but we will actually now burn body fat. Secondly, the moment you have less insulin in your system, you will start reversing the insulin resistance. So you will make the insulin resistance less. So we're kind of going the other way. And also, it often happens that when you start eating carbohydrates that's slowly released into your bloodstream, like in this case, you will actually need to inject less insulin. So very often it can happen that when people drastically changes their diet, they can start reducing their insulin injection, the amounts that they inject a little bit, which is always such a nice thing if that can happen. But also in this case, one of the major benefits is that the blood sugar level will not shoot up like it does with fast releasing carbohydrates. And this means that your blood sugar level is more stable, and you will probably not have the diabetic, side effects that we spoke about earlier. Now let's have a look at how the GI is divided. First of all, I want to just mention something. When we look at the dietary treatment of diabetes, we look at carbohydrates that become glucose slowly, because that's what we have just looked at. If we don't have lots of glucose in the blood, your blood sugar can't shoot up. If there's not lots of insulin, you will not make the insulin resistance worse. So that's what we're trying to look at with carbohydrates, just to keep the glucose level low. So carbohydrates with a high GI value will basically enter your bloodstream at a high speed. You'll have a rapid rise in blood glucose levels, and this takes between 5 minutes to an hour. So that's the very first graph I showed you. Intermediate GI carbohydrates will rise your blood sugar within 2 hours. So this is a relatively slower one. And then low GI is the best one, because the low GI glucose will enter, or the low GI glucose carbohydrates will be digested really slowly, and the glucose enters your blood within 3 hours. So really slow. And just think about if you drive to Cape Town and your petrol tank can only stay full for 5 minutes at a time, you will take a really long time, because if you have to fill up every 5 minutes, it will take you very, very long to get to Cape Town. But if you at least can drive for 3 hours before your tank gets empty, you can get somewhere. And it's exactly the same with us. If we have energy levels and steady glucose for 3 hours, we've got much better blood sugar control, we feel a lot better, and the whole body is fed a lot better. So therefore, the control of blood glucose levels with diet, here we want to include carbohydrates that are broken down to glucose slowly. So a slow rise in blood glucose levels equals low concentrations of insulin, and that equals a decrease in insulin resistance, which is it is all about. Okay, but remember, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. Now, first of all, we should only use SA's own GI lists. So in South Africa, we are very blessed. We've got a wonderful research done here on our own foods. So the GI of most of our own foods are tested, and it can be the brands that we know and love and familiar with. So please consult the South African GI lists or our own list, and you can get it from your dietitian or online. It's very important that we don't use other countries' lists as long as we stay here, because there will be differences in cultivars and processing, and even familiar brands that we know. Sometimes in another country overseas, the GI can be different from, you know, the product that we have, even with the same name. So careful with that. Then secondly, look at the brand names that and how they are specified. So it's quite important that you be specific in terms of what was tested and stick to that name. You will see there are so many South African brand names tested, so it's very, very easy to find something that you like and enjoy, but there can be differences in GI between different brands. So let's say, for instance, the same kind of rice in terms of GI value can differ if the brand name differs. So that's something that's important. Also, different flavors of the same food can affect the GI. So be flavor specific. If the list indicates a specific flavor, stick to that flavor. You can't just swap it with another flavor because it can actually affect your GI value. Then don't assume GIs. Don't think you might think this thing looks good. Rather go for something that's tested. And this is very important. If you only use food where the GI is tested, then we know for sure that it will not be able to affect your blood sugar levels. Because remember, this is tested in labs, and we know we can trust it. It's like scientific. And then lastly, the GI is completely useless unless you use the right amounts. Okay, and this is something we call the glycemic load. So this comes down to, it's not only important what kind of carbohydrate we choose, but it's also important how much we are loading in. So not just how quickly or slowly it comes in, but actually how much we do load in at one time. And this is what's called the glycemic load. So the glycemic load will kind of predict the effect the entire meal or a day has on your blood glucose levels. And we calculate it by using the GI, but also considering the amount, so the grams that you are eating. Now, I want to explain it like this. Let's consider that when we eat high GI foods, it is like a bus driver picking up 5-year-old children. Now, you know how they are. They are small, they're full of energy. All the children will push in through the door all at once. They all will run through the aisle all at once, and within minutes, those 5-year-olds are on their seats, ready to go, and there the bus can go. So this is like when you eat high GI foods. For a very short period of time, you'll have lots of glucose in your bloodstream and lots of insulin, obviously, but then it will be cleared really quickly. Now, on the other hand, if we eat low GI foods, it's like a bus driver picking up 95-year-olds. So they're old and slow, and they do not push in. So the man first in line will take a long time. He will struggle up the stairs. He will go slowly, shuffle through the aisle. And by the time he reaches his bench, the lady that's second in line is now only struggling up the stairs. So at any given time, you'll have very little traffic in the aisle of the bus. So it means like very little glucose in your blood, like with low GI foods. Now, let's say, for instance, you decide to overeat on low GI. So you pick the right carbohydrates, but you eat too much of it. What will happen then? It will be like the bus driver is saying, I don't have 3 hours to wait for all of these people to get in so very slowly. So I'm going to open up 5 extra doors to my bus. Now remember, these 95-year-olds are still old, they're still slow, and they still don't push in. But now we've got 5 times the amount of people getting in slowly, but arriving all at once. And as you can see on my picture, what it means then is, although you eat the right kind of slow release carbohydrate, but you eat too much, all the glucose still arrives at once, and it means you will end up having a high blood sugar, a high GI effect. So please remember, when you include carbohydrates in your diet, to choose slow release ones that will give you small amounts of glucose. More importantly, will stimulate the release of small amounts of insulin, but also they need to be eaten in the right amount. It's extremely, extremely crucial. Okay, now there are a few factors that can actually influence the GI even further. The first one is kind of interesting: mashing, milling, and grinding. So whenever we mash or mill or grind something, and we kind of pre-digest, I want to say, this product outside of the body, you will increase the digestion rate, you will increase the GI value. So please do not make baby food. Don't mash your potatoes. Don't make, for instance, in my example, if you do sweet potatoes, which have a low GI value, and you mash them, you actually push up the GI from having a low GI product to just under high GI. So very, very careful with that. So no baby food. Try and eat the food as unprocessed as possible. Number two is the structure of the starch. Now, people would say to me, okay, why would sweet potato that has purple skin be like released into the blood slower than sweet potato that is orange? The reason for this is just the structure of the starch. So whenever starch has mainly amylose, this is a single strand molecule. So it means it will be just like one single strand. This one will be difficult and slowly to be digested, whereas a millipectin, which is a branch chain structure, is easy to digest it. So it's basically, this is what causes it, the difference. Patients are always asking me, why some bread low GI, others not? This is the reason. So more amylose makes it higher GI, and more amylopectin, more amylose makes it lower GI, and more amylopectin makes it higher GI. Okay, number three is something that many people know about, but I don't really know how it works. Now, whenever we cook a starch, so we add water and we add heat, the starch molecule will swell up in the cooking process. So it basically swells up, and if I can simplify it, when the product is cooked, it is all swollen up and there's lots of space for the digestive enzymes to go and sit, and it means digestion is much faster than when it was raw. Now just think of this practically. If you think about something like raw pasta, you can't eat it. It's way too hard. You can't chew it. It's like completely awful. You can't eat it. But once the pasta is cooked, it's very soft and it's very easy to chew and it's very easy to eat. So you can see that how the cooking, so the addition of water and heat, actually made the digestion much easier. So this means whenever we cook a starch, the GI value will become higher because it's easier to be digested. But now when we cool down a starch again, we will actually reverse the process. So when you cool it down and you remove the heat and you remove the water, the starch molecule becomes like gelish. It's almost like you are forming glue. Just think about pasta that you have cooled down. When you get to the pot of pasta, it's really like all the pasta sticks together and they completely stuck together, and it's difficult to separate them. So you can actually see the glue that formed during the gelatinization. And the same happens when we cool down any kind of cooked starch. So something that we love to eat is mealie meal porridge in South Africa. Now, hot mealie meal porridge has a GI value of 83, which is so high. But cold mealie meal porridge has a GI value of only 50. So you can see going from high GI to low GI just by cooling it down. And also with the just above that, my example of raw carrots, GI value of 16 when it's raw, but when it's cooked, the GI is 58. So it's still low, but it shot up quite a bit. And you can just think about it. Raw carrots is much harder to chew than cooked carrots. So do remember this, that if you can eat certain vegetables raw, it's better because the GI will be lower. But also if you go to family or friends and they serve you something like mealie meal porridge or pasta, you're not so sure what the GI is, you can actually just cool it down, and it will make sure that your blood sugar levels are not, increased that much. Then lastly, acidity. Now, if we add anything acidic to our diets, or our meals rather, like vinegar, or something even like lemon juice, it can actually lower the GI value because it will decrease gastric emptying. So it means your food comes into your gut slower, and then the blood sugar level won't be, like increased that much. So this is just a few things that you can do, easy ways just to lower your blood sugar level a little bit. Now, proteins and fats cannot be broken down to glucose, and therefore they cannot directly affect your blood sugar levels. But, and this is a big but, they also stimulate insulin release. And high amounts of proteins and fats can also lead to insulin resistance and actually increase your insulin resistance. So when I treat diabetic patients in practice, I always make sure that we also look at them having exactly the right amount of proteins and fats. You have to understand this. Proteins are broken down to amino acids and fats are broken down to fatty acids. So they are not broken down to glucose. So when you eat them, they can't necessarily become glucose and increase the blood glucose level. They can't do that. But when they are there when they are digested, they will stimulate the insulin. And remember what I said, we do want to make sure that we keep your insulin resistance as low as possible, and we want as little as possible of insulin circulating in the blood. So it is important to definitely look at your protein and fat amounts as well. So I've got a very simplified plate model for you here. So this circle actually is representative of a plate. Obviously it can be a little bit bigger, but it couldn't fit in, so you can just increase the size of it. But the way a meal should look for a diabetic should be that a quarter of your plate roughly should come from your slow release, low GI carbohydrates. So this would be things like starches like bread, rice, potatoes, mealies, sweet potatoes, pasta, porridges. So all obviously slow release, low GI ones. And then a quarter of the plate should come from low fat proteins. Now, this would be things like milk, yogurt, eggs, cheese, meat, chicken, and fish. We will include a little bit of healthy fat. So healthy fat would be things like nuts, olives, olive oil, canola oil, peanut butter, and avocado peel. And then we will have half the plate of fruits, vegetables, and salad. I think in South Africa, we often do it other way around. So we'll have lots of starch and protein, and we will forget about the vegetables, fruits, and salad. So try and see if you can have a little bit more of this. And remember, especially in the summer heat that we have now, go for raw vegetables, things like carrot salads and beetroot salads and, like green salads. They're really, really good in terms of blood glucose control. Then I want us to discuss a few misconceptions about the GI diet, or just in terms of the diabetic diet rather. First of all, the first misconception is that the complexity of the carbohydrate structure will determine its effect on blood glucose levels. Now, simple carbohydrates like mono, di, and oligosaccharides will not have a more profound effect on blood glucose levels than polysaccharides. Many people think this. If it's a simple carbohydrate, a simple sugar, like many people call it, it will increase your blood sugar level much more than when it's a complex carbohydrate. This is actually not true. A complex carbohydrate, like for instance potato, has a high GI value, while fructose, which is a simple sugar, actually has a low GI value. So there's no rules, and it can be any way around. Sometimes some simple carbohydrates have a high GI, but they can also have low GI values, and the same with the polysaccharides. So that's completely not the truth at all. Number two is a very touchy subject, and this is that all sugar must be avoided. When you actually are diagnosed with diabetes, the first thing everyone tells you is no more sugar for you. You're not allowed to have any sugar. We have to remember, however, that not all sugar affects the blood sugar levels equally. We are looking to avoid sugar that will become glucose very fast. But we have to remember regular table sugar, so regular white or brown table sugar, actually has a medium GI value. It's sucrose. We call it sucrose. And sucrose actually takes 2 hours to become glucose in the bloodstream. So meaning if you have very tiny amounts of sucrose, it will actually not affect your blood sugar levels. And we actually say small amounts. So let's say, for instance, you use a teaspoon of sugar in something like when you prepare a curry or a tomato dish. That 1 teaspoon of sugar is going to be divided into 6 portions. And it's way too little to actually cause any problems in blood sugar, or rise your blood sugar levels. So small amounts of sugar, table sugar, will not affect you. But I can't stretch this enough, small amounts. So we don't want to overeat. Remember what I explained about the glycemic load, the old people all getting in at once. It will definitely happen with sugar as well. Then also we must remember, because some people say, oh, but what about fruits? Fruits are way too sugary. That fruit actually contains fructose, and fructose takes between 2 to 3 hours to become glucose. So that is a very slow release sugar as well. So as long as you use small amounts of fruit at a time, so not like fruit bowls and fruit salads, it's actually completely safe and it will not affect blood sugar levels. So I usually go by the rule, a tennis ball size of fruit portion and 2 hours apart. So be very careful with this, and also careful, there are certain sugars that are really very dangerous. Things like maltodextrin and maltose can actually make your blood sugar levels shoot up more than glucose. So if you ever see maltodextrin or maltose on a product, please stay away. It's absolutely not advisable, and it will definitely increase your blood sugar levels very, very much. And then I want to say that it's also a big misconception that all fiber will actually lower your blood glucose levels. If you want to use fiber that will lower blood sugar levels, you need to go for soluble fiber. So soluble fiber we find inside the flesh part of fruits and vegetables, and also some oats. So those are the ones that are absolutely wonderful, and they can help you to reduce your blood sugar levels because they will reduce your intestinal transit time. But insoluble fiber. So insoluble fiber are the fiber that is not digested. So you can actually see it in the stool. It's like things like whole wheat kernels, husks, pips, seeds, nuts. They don't digest, and they just move through your gut. So they have no effect on blood sugar levels. If you include them, they will not affect your blood sugar levels at all. But including soluble fiber, so remember flesh part of fruits, vegetables, and also oats, they will. And that's why if you think back of my plate model, all that fruits and vegetables and salad that we include definitely helps to control blood sugar levels. Very important, I would say, is to consult your dietitian for your own personalized diet. Your diet needs to be adjusted to your lifestyle, what you like, how active you are, and how your blood sugar levels are controlled. So please do not use a generic diet. Also, we've got so much new information, so much new science regarding the diabetic diet. So it's really important. Please don't Google, don't listen to your neighbor, don't read something in a magazine. Rather consult a dietitian that's a specialist on diabetes and that can help you. And my number one rule in my practice is always, you have to love what you eat. If you absolutely love your food, you will stick to this and you will be able to make a wonderful success of the treatment of your diabetes and hopefully improve your health for the better. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and lots of blessing to all of you, and stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Hildegard. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. My apologies for not switching on my camera for the closing, but we currently have a power outage. So, if you have any questions, kindly email them to bestmeddiabetes@halocare.co.za, and we will also send a copy of the presentation to you very soon. And then with that, I would like to thank Tembi and Halocare for rendering these services to our members and for your time and willingness to present. And also a big thank you to you, Hildegard, for your time and useful insight on this matter. And then lastly, I want to thank you, our valued member, for also availing yourself to attend this session. I trust that you found it informative, and I wish you a great evening further, and thank you. Bye-bye.